What's up, guys? I am Connor Hayden, and this is Corn Craze. And today we've got a very special guest. We've got JD Pickell from On3, and you guys have requested him for about the last month. And I even saw some of you in his comments trying to get him to come on the show. So thank you guys for all of that. I know when you guys go out and recruit for the live stream, it really helps to get people motivated to come on because they see how diehard Nebraska fans are about their content. And as you guys know, we got the strongest fan base in the country. So with all of that, I'm just going to bring JD on right now. JD, welcome to the Corn Craze Social Club live stream. How you doing?
Man, I'm good. I appreciate y'all having me. Y'all have an absolute army here on this channel, and they were in our comments, and I'm glad we got to make this happen, brother.
Yeah, man, we're excited to have you here, I will tell you. And part of the reason we're so excited to have you here is because you've been so high on Nebraska. And I was pretty surprised by that because a lot of national people, they've got opinions about Nebraska bringing guys in on the transfer portal, guys bringing Mark Whipple and Mickey Joseph, but they don't really believe in Scott Frost. And it sounds like you do have a little bit of belief in Scott Frost still.
Yeah, I really do, man. I mean, you look at his track record. I mean, right when he got hired away from UCF, had a conversation with my dad. We'll text most college football Saturdays, and it was like, man, if you're buying stock in a coach, and this is at that point in time, maybe it's a different conversation right now, but if you're buying stock in a coach, got to be investing something into Scott Frost. And I think there's some other circumstances as to why it hasn't worked just yet. But I mean, it's funny when you just look at the record because the record doesn't always tell the whole story. And I think Nebraska fans would probably attest to that with the same stat that everybody seems to regurgitate with, hey, eight losses by a score or whatever it was. And I mean, I think there's so much more to Nebraska. And I think with getting that quarterback piece right, potentially, there's some things to be excited about, and for good reason.
So there's still some faith on your end, and we like to hear that. So guys, I want to start this off by introing JD a little bit because he's got a relatively new channel. It's something obviously we've all been watching just because he has been talking a lot about Nebraska, and I'm sure he's going to have some good things to say about us this year because we're going to see some positive outcomes finally. But JD, you were doing another YouTube channel I saw before you were doing the Hard Count on 3. So what was that? Was that a national show? And then how did you end up at On3 and with the Hard Count?
Man, it's funny. I'll sort of give you the longer version. So I was working an 8 to 5 job for a home care company. Nothing but great things to say about the company. Hart was always doing college football, doing sports media, and so there's a limited. I'm trying to find the right word to say. It's not the easiest thing to do, right? To make a living and support, yourself and your family, or whatever it is. So all that's to say, was doing this YouTube channel on my lunch break. So I'd be at work around 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock, whatever time it was, wherever we could sneak into the studio and get some segments done. Go knock them out. Okay, after that hour ends, come back, get back to work, and that was kind of my day for the better part of the last year or so. And so just trying to find a way to, one, just, hone my craft and continue to just be diligent of, like, I viewed it as like a practice, if you will. Like, okay, good video, bad video, lots of views, no views. I went to practice today. I got better and made another step towards where I wanted to eventually be, which was to do this for full time. And then out of the blue, more or less, we were able to kind of, grow more of our subscriber base and get more buzz, if you will, and was fortunate enough to get reached out to by On3 to come do this as a full-time job in Nashville. So I was previously in Texas, Central Texas, doing that, and now able to do this for a profession. So that's kind of the synopsis of how we're here now. But it's been a blast, and excited to finally have some games to talk about here.
That's awesome. So guys, if you've seen his channel, you've seen that in the last few weeks, he's already got, I think he has as many subscribers as Corn Craze does, but so he's going towards 100,000 by the end of the season, no question. He's a direct competitor of a channel like Josh Pate, the Late Kick on 24/7. So you're definitely going to see JD around this entire season and for sure in the future. So anyway, I'm really happy about your success because you are so high on Nebraska, but I'm really happy for you and that you were able to go from being a smaller creator to getting a real opportunity out there. So another thing, guys, one of the reasons I was able to reach out to JD and confidently able to reach out to JD is because I noticed he was from my hometown. He actually played high school football down the street from the school I played high school football at, which I thought was super random. But JD, where are you from? Because I want to know exactly where you lived in accordance to where I lived, because that's a super small world situation.
Yeah, especially for how big Orange County is for us to be in that same little segment. So I went to Orange Lutheran High School as you already alluded to. And I lived in the city of Villa Park. So right down the street, must have been like a mile from the high school itself. I'm trying to think of the street name itself. That's kind of escaping me. What was it? I'm trying to think what I was even next to. I was
Okay, well,
next
I'm just gonna
to
tell
that
you.
little
I'm gonna tell
shopping
you where
center
I
with like the
lived.
bagels. Yeah, tell me, and we can work backwards.
So
We can solve for why there.
I lived off Center, which if you went down
Okay.
from Bagel Me straight past Villa Park High School and made a right, I lived literally over the wall from Villa Park High School. So, just for context, that's how
Okay,
close you and I
that's what it
grew
was
up next
called.
to each
Bagel
other.
me.
Yep.
Yes. Okay. So I was like right behind Bagel me, dude. That is a small world.
So
That's
just so you
funny.
guys
Yeah,
know,
that's where I was.
JD is 4 years younger than I am. He went to the high school down the street from me, and we grew up less than 5 minutes walking distance from each other. So that is pretty crazy. But anyway, we're gonna get straight into some Nebraska football talk. I just want to give you guys a little introduction to who JD is, and I wanted to get to know him myself because I'm telling you, that is some crazy small world stuff. So you've been talking about Nebraska football this offseason. You've been high on him with the transfer portal. Have you been talking about him because you're high on him, or has it been for the views because you know how diehard Nebraska fans are?
Dude, one super fair question, and I will answer it in the most political way possible. Um, we are in a business, right, where we talk about things that people care about. And it became very evident early on that people care about Nebraska football. I will say, in addition to that, everything I say about Nebraska is 100% genuine and sincere. Like, I'm not sitting here talking about, hey, I think Nebraska could be good because that'll help us get traction, get views, whatever it may be. Like, everything I say about Nebraska is 100% legitimate. And I think it shows, credit to the fan base, credit to the program, that they are still, even after a 3-9 season, 100% relevant to the national picture. And that's for Nebraska, for as long as they've been trying to rebuild and get things right under Scott Frost, it's a testament to them. So to answer your question, we talk about what's relevant, and Nebraska is relevant. And I think they're going to be even more relevant this coming year with all the ways that they've rebuilt this program and the ways that they've sort of retooled it is probably a better word to use, because I think Ochaun Mathis and Casey Thompson are both huge gets at premier positions. I know we'll talk about that a little bit more, but so that's a short answer to your question. I think they're relevant.
What's interesting is you're saying they're relevant, and you see, I'm not sure if you're on Twitter, but you see constant hate for Nebraska on Twitter, and Nebraska's irrelevant. Nebraska sucks. They don't matter. The fact is, Nebraska has been relevant this entire time because people would not be talking about them the way they've been talking about them for the past 4 years, even in the negative light and with the negative situations that's happened, if they weren't. So I'm happy to hear someone outside of just us is feeling that same way. So you said Nebraska 7-5, which I thought was a pretty fair prediction. I said 8-4 myself. A lot of people think they could go as many as 10. If you had to give a floor and then a ceiling, where are we looking at?
Yeah, that's a fair question. I would say in terms of ceiling, you probably got to steal some of these games that are going to be a little more tricky. Like probably have to find a way to get a win against Minnesota or at Michigan. You also got to find a way to beat Wisconsin. Like, I think if you end up stealing two of those three, you could find yourself closer to 9. I think 9's probably as high as I'd be willing to go when it comes to the ceiling. The floor, I would say the floor has got to be somewhere around 5 or 6 wins. Like, I really don't see them in a worst case scenario losing less than 5 games. Now, I've gone on record and said I think they'll be bowl eligible even before we get to the month of November, just because of the way the schedule shakes out. Now, I think this week 0 game in Ireland against Northwestern, I think everybody who watches your channel would agree this is huge, just in terms of kind of setting the pace, setting the tempo to getting to that spot. Because we remember a season ago when they lost that opener against Illinois, it just kind of felt like it took the wind out of everybody's sails, right? Like, it was just sort of a deflating moment, and you lose so much confidence when you lose a game in that fashion. And people say, well, hey, each week its own week. No, it's not. In the college football season, yes, you play each game separately, but the psyche of your team is really, forms itself throughout the course of different weeks. And so to be able to solidify that and to have a positive point to jump off from going into North Dakota and then Georgia Southern, then eventually having Oklahoma come to town, I think it's crucial. So to answer your question, I think 9 is probably the highest the ceiling goes for me, but I feel better about that 7-win number for Nebraska in 2022.
Yeah, and for anybody who watched them last year and has seen what's been going on the last 4 years, I think 7 would be a fair assumption. But there are 2 games that stand out on the schedule, and we've got a question right here from Cody. He wants to know, well, I'm going to rephrase this question because I think I have a better way to ask it. Who's more likely to beat Nebraska? OU in Lincoln or Michigan at home?
That's tough to say. So I'm going to say Oklahoma to me is more likely to beat Nebraska, even though it's at home. I mean, I look at the Michigan game a season ago. Nebraska could have very easily won that game. And I think Michigan's actually going to be taking a step back in terms of what they have in that program in 2022. I mean, you don't have the edge rushers, the quarterback situation. Not that it's a bad situation, but you're still trying to figure out what you want to do there. And that's going to take what they do offensively. So I'm just really high on Oklahoma this year, probably more so than a lot of people. And I think the fact that it's early in the year, Oklahoma, I mean, let's call it what it is. That'll be their first real test. Like Northwestern will be a solid brand of football they're going to bring. It's going to be good for Nebraska to see that. But Oklahoma will be the first heavy hitter that they see. Now, they get the benefit of having them at home, but I really feel like Nebraska could be a team that goes into Ann Arbor and wins that game. So to answer your question, I'll say I think Oklahoma presents the bigger threat to Nebraska.
Okay, let's stick on to Oklahoma now. So they've got a new coach, just like Nebraska has a bunch of new coaches. They've got a new OC. They've got to bring in a new scheme. Do you think they're going to be fully prepared and ready to roll in Lincoln? Do you think that Venables just has more experience than some of these other coaches? What do you think the determining factor is when it comes to coaching for Venables and Levy versus Whipple and Frost?
Yeah, I think the bigger variable to me is the fact that Dylan Gabriel and Jeff Levy have worked together and worked together well. I think that's probably just the hardest piece of your offense to have synced up. Like, getting the receivers together and the quarterbacks on the same timing, like that just comes throughout fall camp and spring practice and stuff like that. But to be on the same page as an OC and a quarterback, mentally saying, hey, I know my quarterback likes to roll to the left because he's a left-hander, and I know he likes to throw the intermediate game here. He feels good about the flood concepts. Like, just being able to be synced up there is so crucial. And so especially early in the year, if they're just a step ahead of everybody for that component in itself. Now, the defense may take a second for Oklahoma, but I think what you have at quarterback and offensive coordinator, maybe I'm putting too much stock in it, but for better or worse, I just think that's going to be a big impact for them, especially early in the year, to get a jump on some people.
Right. They've already been recruiting some really highly rated guys on offense, so they're going to have a bunch of guys back. Those guys have been trained by one of the best offensive minds in college football already. So when you bring in a guy like Jeff Levy, who's already proven, Dylan Gabriel, who's proven, I see where you're going with it. I don't like it, but I understand it. Here's a question I got. It says, JD, is this a make or break season for Frost? So obviously Nebraska has their own, threshold he's got to get to. And the AD hasn't come out and said directly what it's going to be. What would you say if you were Nebraska's AD is the minimum requirement for Scott Frost to keep his job this year? And it's funny because he's had so many bad seasons that even a decent season could make the normal person say, oh, well, that's somewhat, improved. But in reality, Scott Frost has some of the best recruiting classes over the last few years. He's got the best coaches, the best players. What's the minimum?
I think at 7, you're safe. I think if it's 6, it's got to be the right 6. Like, you can't drop one of these games at Rutgers and still be able to keep your job. It's got to be a convincing 6 wins. Like, hey, we did go into Ann Arbor and we did beat Michigan. Bring us back. We're building on this. Or, hey, we did beat Oklahoma at home, the third, or I guess it was the 4th game of our season. So I think 7 is the number that I really do feel confident in, just because at that point, you've jumped 4 wins from your total a season ago. How can you, if you're Scott Frost and you walk into that office, I think it's going to be a lot easier to sell the trajectory of the program as opposed to saying, hey, we won 6, but we did drop a game here. Because that's kind of been the routine theme for Nebraska, is being so close, but we just had a couple things not go our way. Like, I think at that point, if you win 6 games and have that, because they have the roster to win 6 games. I mean, I think just from talent alone, you roll the ball out and play. They have the guys in that locker room to very easily win 6 games, in my opinion.
Well, I think if you have the right coach with this exact locker room, this could be a 10-win team. I truly believe that. I think obviously it would take a special coach, but those guys have a lot of talent and they've been recruited for 4 or 5 years on that same level. So I hear that. I've got a question for you.
Yeah, and I think some of it too comes down to, or sorry, you go ahead.
No, keep going. If you got more to say, go.
Well, my thought was, to some degree in this season, you got to catch a couple breaks, right? Like, to some level, if you're going to be a 10-win team, you might have to have a couple things swing your way. Like, I think about a team like Baylor last year. who was, I want to say they were something like 2-8 during the pandemic year. Maybe they were 2-7, but bottom line, not good. Like very much so, way off the mark from what they were hoping to have there at Baylor. And then the second year under Dave Aranda, won some close games early, got their confidence built up. I think they beat Iowa State on like one of the last plays of the game, the 2-point conversion. They batted away. Like if that play goes differently, how differently are we talking about Baylor when it goes to November of that season? So
Right.
I think 10, you probably need a couple of things to break your way that you can't always control. But, football is a beautiful and unpredictable game. So it's far be it for me to predict they won't win 10 games, but I do think you need some things to happen your way.
100%. Okay. I've got this question for you. Nebraska was going after 4 quarterbacks. Well, they were going after like 6 different quarterbacks. Talked to Jake Haener, who wasn't able to transfer, so he had to stay. Obviously, they talked to Casey Thompson. They talked to Miles Brennan and a couple other guys, but there were a bunch of names floated around is the point. And I want you to rank these 4 transfer quarterbacks. Give me a power ranking going into the season.
Okay.
We've got Casey Thompson, Adrian Martinez, Bo Nix, and JT Daniels.
That's tricky. That's a tricky one. I'm going to, and this is not because it's not because we're a Nebraska program right here. It's not because we're playing to the audience. I'm going to put Casey Thompson first because I think I know what I'm getting with him. I have a pretty large sample size. He didn't get benched last year, which is, I think, the reason why you put JT Daniels at 2. Like, my thought is, what's happening behind closed doors? What is happening to where Kirby Smart says, I want to go with this walk-on quarterback and not JT Daniels, the former 5-star? There's something there to where I'm like, that feels fishy. Maybe it's just the fact that you're at Georgia and there's something going on there to where, hey, we can't have somebody driving this bus and crash. We're not going to do that. So I put Casey Thompson first because I feel confident about the sample size. I put JT Daniels second because I think he just has so much under the hood just from a pure ability standpoint. I'm going to go ahead and put Bo Nix third because he's a playmaker and he does have a tons of talent for all of his shortcomings. And I think there's some degree of difficulty being the quarterback at Auburn, especially for as early as he was thrown into the fire. So I'll put Bo Nix at 3, but Adrian Martinez at 4, but I think he's actually going to thrive at Kansas State. I think he's in a system that's going to really play to his skill set and ask less of him as a passer because Nebraska fans know there were times where he wasn't always the most consistent or the most accurate. So I don't think any of those are bad options for you, but that's probably how I see them shaking out when it comes to power rankings going into 2022. But I will say this, I don't think it's a super wide margin from 1 to 4. Like, I think it's just situations being better going into 2022. And as we all know, situations for a quarterback, I mean, it can't be overstated. So that's where I fall on those 4. But I like that exercise. That's a tricky that's a tricky question there, man.
The JT Daniels one is really interesting to me because he was really good that first year at SC, and the red flags came out at Georgia when he wasn't starting. Why is Stetson Bennett starting over him? You got to be able to win that job. So, and then you end up at West Virginia, which isn't exactly a powerhouse, and he's got to go somewhere he can play and that he knows he can play. So that says something to me about his confidence level in himself right now. So yeah, I liked JT Daniels and the idea that he could potentially come to Nebraska, but much happier with Casey Thompson for all those reasons you said. Here's a question from Matthew. What do you think that'll make Casey the guy, or what do you think will make Casey Thompson the guy? Will it be his decision-making, his arm talent, his film study, or something else?
Another good question. I think Casey Thompson kind of alluded to it in his press conference when he just talked about, I think the question was posed to him. Hey, how are you going to make this team more confident? Like, what are you going to do to up everybody's level of play? He just said, I'm a poised guy. I haven't been nervous since my first start, and we played against Oklahoma, which is one of the biggest rivalries in college football, and it was his first start. And so I think just the level of what his even keel demeanor, I think that's really something that is going to do wonders for Nebraska, just because it's a program that's still trying to, I think, validate to themselves that, hey, we can do this. And you can have all the fall camp you want, all the spring ball you want, but until you see live bullets and until you actually have to do it in a game, it's hard to convince the person in the mirror that you are who you believe you are. And I think for Casey Thompson, kind of having that swagger and having that presence. Now, we still got to produce on the field. Don't get it twisted. But if he can, produce on the field and have that demeanor to match, I think teams take on the persona of their quarterback, especially good ones. And so I think that's ultimately what's going to be a big boost for this program as they move forward in the Casey Thompson era, if you will.
I'll take it. We need anything at the quarterback position that can be at least consistent and do everything you just said. So I'll be happy with that. I got another question from Colin. Do you think Trey Palmer is being way too overhyped? I hope he balls out, but I'm just curious. So let me give you a little background so you can get the idea or the Nebraska fans' perspective on what's happened with Trey. Trey was at LSU. He was the number 4 receiver last year. He's had a couple kick return, punt return touchdowns. So he's done some things, but he never broke out as a number 1 guy. Obviously, LSU had some great receivers, and it was hard to break out as a top guy at that school. But coming to Nebraska, he's got a lot of confidence. He's on camera, talks shit. I love it. I think the offense needs it. Scott Frost has said that's a good thing. But is Nebraska hyping him up too much as this number 1 receiver and as this potential all Big Ten type of player? Or do you think he maybe had a change when he transferred? Obviously, you're a former player. You played running back, running back receiver. So you have played the position. You're not just a talking head, right? Do you think that change for him is something that can bring something more out than just a number 4 option?
Yeah, I think as the old saying goes, you kind of got to see it before anybody else does. And so has he done it on the field yet as the number 1 receiver? No. But if he believes he has, I mean, I'm not going to tell him no. I mean, if I'm a coach at Nebraska, I'm not going to try and tone that down. I mean, all the greats, I feel like, have that dog in them and kind of let that presence be felt around with other people in the room. And so for Trey Palmer, it's all talk until it actually happens on the field, right? And so everybody's all conference before the season starts. Everybody's all everything. And so I guess the best way to put that is, we're going to get to see on the field. I think the all conference conversation around him is probably a bit generous, but again, if I'm Trey Palmer, I don't feel any need to, show any more humility just because it makes other people uncomfortable. So, I mean, I love that alpha mentality coming from my number 1 receiver. Like, yeah, you believe who, you believe you are, you believe that you are that top dog. We're going to feed you and give you every opportunity to prove yourself right. And, we'll feed off that. I think that's the biggest thing is when you have that juice, when you have that self-confidence, that swagger, that can either be selfish or it can juice everybody else around you and be like, yeah, I want to be confident like Trey. I want to walk around like Trey's walking around. Why shouldn't we feel the way that we feel about ourselves? And so I think it's probably going to be more the latter, especially if he produces on the field, which by most accounts, it sounds like he has been that guy through fall camp. So excited to watch him finally put it on the tape.
I like that. Okay. I got one more question about Adrian Martinez before we move on to the Northwestern preview, because just so you guys know, I'm going to be following Kansas State this year. I like Adrian. I want him to succeed, and I'm really interested to hear what other people think about him because he's had some choppy moments over the last while. So I want to know, is Adrian a better fit at Kansas State than he was at Nebraska? And I want to know what your thoughts are on them and what their ceiling could be.
Yeah, the question to that is absolutely, or excuse me, the answer to that question is absolutely. He's a better fit at Kansas State just for where he is in his career. Like, been dinged up. There has been, valid concerns about what he can do throwing the football. And I think Kansas State's just going to make it all simple for him. They're going to play to their strengths. They're going to run the quarterback. They're going to throw it off play action. They're going to hit you in the mouth and not ask too much of him. And I think at Nebraska, there were times where they probably asked him to do things that he wasn't 100% physically capable of doing. And then, the ball security, things like that, throwing downfield and being inconsistent there. It's hard to win when you have a quarterback who's not able to do those things, right? Especially in that system. So the answer there is absolutely he's a better fit at Kansas State. But for Kansas State, there are a lot of people's pick to kind of be a sleeper team in the Big 12. And the Big 12 is fascinating right now because you have 8 of the 10 teams going through either a coaching change or a quarterback change. And so with all of that transition, I think Kansas State could be in position to make a move. Now, I don't think Kansas State is going to be a team that competes for the Big 12 title, but every single year, Kansas State, no matter who's coaching them, no matter who's playing quarterback, they're always a team that will probably end somebody's hopes of playing for the Big 12 title. And I think that's probably going to be true this year. I put them right around, if I had to be conservative, I'd say probably an 8-win football team, but they're sneaky. And I'm excited for Adrian to finally get a chance to hopefully have his strengths play to a little bit more.
I like that. Yeah, I think he'll have a little bit more help. They won't have to rely on him solely just as much. You got a guy like Deuce Vaughn who can do a lot. So it's good that he's going to finally have a running back. I'm going to say that. So here's the hard-hitting question that you guys are going to want. If they played Nebraska and Northwestern in Ireland on Saturday, or Nebraska and Kansas State, sorry, not Nebraska and Northwestern, Who wins that game, Nebraska or Kansas State?
Oh gosh. See, that's tough. That's tough, man. I would lead in Kansas State there. I would, just because I think Kansas State probably has more of an identity right now, especially defensively. Now, if they were to play week 7, I don't know, because I think Nebraska is still a team that, we've all talked about it. How quickly do these transfers make an impact? How quickly do they gel? So I would lean Kansas State. I know it's not going to be popular in this chat, but I would lean Kansas State because of the identity factor in the first week of the season. We'll see what happens down the road, but in the first week of the season, I think I'd probably take Kansas State.
Okay, that's fair. Then I have another question following that up. We talk about the identity question, all these transfers. We had Michigan State win, 10, 11 games last year. Do you think Nebraska could be the next Michigan State? Or do you think Michigan State had a little bit, I don't know, did they have the right pieces? Did they have a better head coach? What makes it different in your eyes, Nebraska and Michigan State of 2020, 2021?
Yeah, that's a great question. So Michigan State had that Kenneth Walker piece, basically, right? Like, he was the game breaker that I think none of us saw coming. The transfer from Wake Forest, looking for another shot. And then this dude's like in the Heisman conversation around late October. We're all like, what is going on? So if Anthony Grant, the number 1 JUCO running back, if he ends up being similar to Kenneth Walker, like, heck yes, that could be Nebraska. Now, that's obviously a big ask for somebody who's just now getting back to the FBS level, and he could very well be that. But I think that would you probably need a game breaker like that, like maybe Trey Palmer is all that he's worked up to be. Maybe Casey Thompson is all he's worked up to be. Somebody on the offensive side of the football, in my mind, would have to hit in a Kenneth Walker-like fashion for that to be true. But I mean, the beauty of college football is so much of it, to me, is situational, and so much of it is fit-based. And if you just catch that team on the right day, like Michigan State did to Michigan a year ago, so 10 wins would probably require something to that effect for me.
Fair enough. I think that, Nebraska fans at least are hoping that Anthony Grant could be that piece you're talking about. And that brings us to this question from Nick. What's Whipple's first play call? Is he going to go vertical, or is he going to give the ball to Anthony Grant?
Ooh, that's it. See, these are all great questions right now from the Corn Craze Army. I will say, I think you probably run the ball. I mean, you're playing an international game. Let your number 1 JUCO running back recruit eat a little bit. I do think they'll be pass heavy, though. Like, I think they're eventually going to – I think at the end of the season, you'll see probably a 55-45 split pass to run. But I think you probably let Anthony Grant get loose a little bit on that first play.
So you said 55-45 pass to run in this game is your guess?
Mm-hmm. Or sorry, at the end of the season. At the end of the season.
What do you think in this game? Do you think Nebraska's going to be more of a run team or a pass team in this game? It's going to be Casey Thompson's coming out party.
Yeah, you would hope so. I think it's going to be, gosh, I'm totally guessing here, but I think it'll be probably a little bit more. So Nebraska's offense will be pass first, but I'm thinking you probably ride with whatever's working at halftime, right? So if Anthony Grant's eating, you feed that man and you do not take your foot off the gas. I think Nebraska probably wants to throw the football, honestly. I think that's probably what they would like to do. You let Trey Palmer eat, you let Marcus Washington eat, you let some of these other guys eat. I'll say they probably go more pass than run, but if Anthony Grant's on fire, I will very quickly change my tune.
Fair enough. Okay. So you said in your video that I think you released it yesterday, you talked about Nebraska score prediction, and you said they would cover the 13 points. Is that correct?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep, they will. Northwestern. Yeah, go ahead.
I said that they would win by 8. That was my projection. And my fear is Northwestern returns 9 dudes on offense, right? They lose their center, they lose a receiver, but their identity is to run the ball. And they've got 2 great running backs coming back and 4 of those 5 offensive linemen. It's hard for me to believe that Nebraska, they're returning 2 edge rushers, but their entire interior is going to be, I don't want to call them small because they're not small guys, but they're going to be new. This is their first time starting. They've got 1 guy coming back in Ty Robinson, but the other guys, they're unknown. Stephon Wynn, who was a backup at Alabama, Devin Drew, who played at Texas Tech. He's a little bit smaller and played in the Big 12. You got O'Shawn, who played in the Big 12. Northwestern's going to try to exploit that. Do you think that the Northwestern offense isn't getting enough credit this year, since they do have so much returning and they have been successful and made that offense successful for so many years in the Big Ten?
I think the short answer is probably no. I mean, last year they were averaging, I think, 16 points a game, and so I pretty closely look at the hey, who's coming back because experience is so crucial in college football. But with how unsuccessful they were a season ago with that points per game number, I would need to see a pretty big jump from some of those guys, especially on the offensive line, or maybe at the playmaker position. Probably not so much at the offensive line, having Evan Hull go over 1,000 yards last year. But yeah, so I mean, I'm honestly not overly worried about Northwestern, and that's one of the big reasons why I think you are going to see Nebraska cover that 13.5 numbers, because I think the offense under Casey Thompson kind of will get revved up, and then once you get 2 scores up a Northwestern, do they start to press? Do they start to turn the ball over? Do they get off schedule? And how difficult is it for them once you start playing from behind? So a quick start for Nebraska, I think, could make this thing ugly pretty early on. So remains to be seen. Offense still has to score points, which is something we're all on the edge of our seat waiting to see. But we're going to see just how much Northwestern can do if they do get to that position. And I like Nebraska's odds there.
Then last year, Nebraska had 4 sacks against Northwestern, and they forced, I think, 2 turnovers. This year, do you see kind of the same situation, or do you think that Northwestern is going to be a lot more cautious, protected with football, and not trying to take any shots? What's your guess there? Sacks and turnovers, is that going to be higher? No.
Yeah, I think they're probably going to give quite a bit of attention to O'Shawn Mathis. I don't think they're going to be super aggressive throwing the football if they don't have to be. They want to pound the rock. They want to let Hull eat. They want to let those big boys up front eat and just try and ground and pound your death, control the tempo, shorten the game. But it's hard to do if you're down by 2 scores, which I think I've kind of made clear here. I think they're going to jump on them early offensively. So in that sense, maybe you see some turnovers later in the game with them trying to do too much. But I mean, if it's tight early, I think it's going to be a quick first half and could take it to the fourth quarter.
Yeah, last year the turnovers is really what separate that game and made it such a wide gap halfway through there. So I'm hoping we can get some turnovers, but I don't know. Okay, another off-topic question before we finish this up with Northwestern. I want to know, where was this popped up in the chat? Not missing your chats, guys. I'm paying attention. He said, I can't find it, but the question was, who's the biggest sleeper team in college football this year?
For me, it's Minnesota. I think Minnesota bringing back the starting quarterback with Morgan, who's on his 37th year playing college football, and then Ibrahim, the running back. I think he is a dude. I remember watching the beginning of that game against Ohio State last year before he got hurt, and I was like, Minnesota has Ohio State on the ropes. Like, they may actually pull this off at home. So I'm really excited to see what Minnesota does. They're actually my pick to come out of that part of the conference. I think they're actually going to end up playing in the Big Ten title game. So it's call your shot season. Everybody's right at this point in the year before we've even played a game. But I really like what Minnesota has with guys coming back on defense, and then being able to run the ball with Ibrahim could be the difference maker for them.
So I asked this question to my guest last week. What are your thoughts on PJ Fleck? Is he a coach who you think could sneak in and become an elite head coach and end up at a school like a Michigan or a USC or Texas down the line? Or do you think he's found his home in a kind of a level like a Minnesota, and that's where he belongs?
Yeah, I wonder, does he have any desire to move up to a bigger program? Because at some point I'm kind of like, I think you fit Michigan, man. Like, excuse me, not Michigan, Minnesota. I think that, that kind of fits you, right? Like, you're sort of, you kind of take on this underdog persona of, we're going to do all little things right. We're going to row the boat, a big juice guy. I feel like that fits at Minnesota. And I feel like that's a great spot for him. I don't know why you need to be happier than happy if you're him. Now, obviously, he's a former player himself, extremely competitive. Wouldn't be surprised if that was something that he aspired to be. But I think he fits at Minnesota. If I'm him, I would just try and build from within there and continue to take what he's done there well. Now, I think obviously if he does have the season that I think Minnesota could have, and they end up playing for the Big Ten title and all that, which again, call your shot season, right? Who knows if Minnesota ends up there? But if they do have that kind of success, there's going to be some programs that come knocking and say, hey, PJ, come coach our guys, and they'll have a decision to make. But I think if it's in Minnesota, I don't see the point in trying to be happier than happy.
Fair enough. Okay, I've got one more question on this Northwestern preview. They've got a quarterback named Ryan Helinski. He started off at South Carolina. Before that, he was at Orange Lutheran. You've obviously been familiar with him for a while because he was the quarterback at the school after you left. So have you met Helinski, by the way?
Yeah, I have. Yeah, we've had a few conversations here and there. Really good guy. I mean, high character guy, you shake his hand, and you're like feeling like you're talking to an NFL quarterback. I mean, just carries himself with that kind of poise.
Okay, so last year he obviously had some struggles at Northwestern. He was good as a freshman at South Carolina. Do you think he ends up getting back to form and plays kind of how he played at South Carolina? Do you think that he could get beat out? I don't even know what the other quarterback's name at Northwestern is. My guess is he's going to be the starter for this game, even though they haven't announced it. What are your thoughts on him? He wasn't very good last year, but is that a concern that Nebraska's going to look out for?
I don't know if it's a concern in this game. I think he will eventually find his footing. It's interesting looking at what they're asking him to do at Northwestern versus what he did at South Carolina. I mean, a much more open offense, whereas Northwestern's like, hey, manage the game, don't crash this car, hand the ball off to Hull, throw off play action if you have to. I think that's probably something to where we'll see his production be a little bit lesser than if it were a wide open offense. But I believe in his skill set more than anything. I mean, came out of high school, was an Elite 11 guy, a guy that was obviously really highly touted. I think that he'll probably be successful, but I don't know that it'll be anything that Nebraska fans need to worry about in game one as they're still trying to find themselves offensively.
Fair enough. I've got one more question here before we hop over to our A and B segment. This is Huskers fan. He wants to know your outlook on Iowa this year. What did you say? I don't even know if you made a prediction for their record yet, but what do you think the outlook is? Because Nebraska wants to.
Yeah, didn't have a prediction on Iowa from a record standpoint. It's so funny talking about Iowa because we could time travel from this moment either 5 years forward or 5 years back. And if they're still a Kirk Ferentz coach team, they're going to look roughly the same, like give or take a few jersey numbers here, run the ball, going to play tough defense. You think Big Ten football, you think about Iowa, think about Nebraska and those teams that just have a blue collar edge about them. So they kind of remind me honestly of a Kansas State in the Big Ten. I mean, with what they're going to do in terms of being able to potentially ruin somebody's shot at the Big Ten title, but probably not going to be a team that you're talking about being in the Big Ten title hunt when it comes to late November. So, I mean, they're just that thorn in everybody's side. And I will say this, I think Nebraska ends up beating them to end the year. I do. I think they go in there and I think they end up winning that game and secure Scott Frost's job.
Okay, here's a question I have then. Follow that one up. Nebraska is in position to get into the Big Ten championship game. Iowa is not. Iowa's done. But that game is in Iowa City this year. So does Nebraska win that game with the Big Ten West on the line, or does Iowa pull the upset in that one, if that's the situation?
Yeah, if that's the situation, then I'm assuming the offense for Nebraska is pretty explosive. I think they've probably lived up to the billing, assuming Trey Palmer's that guy, assuming Casey Thompson's that guy. Just from, where we're sitting here in August, I kind of like the way Nebraska matches up with an Iowa team. I mean, in terms of what they're going to do on the outside and having receivers like we're projecting they will. I think Nebraska wins that game, truthfully. I really like the way they match up with them, and that this could all be a very different conversation when we get to that game the week of, but I really think that Nebraska ends up winning that game from a matchup standpoint.
I like it. All right, these are some great predictions from JD. I hope you guys appreciate him being here because I really do. These are awesome. So now, Denny, can you come in and do our A and B segment before we let JD get out of here?
Alrighty. I'm not going to over-explain the rules this week. You guys answer A or B. I'm going to ask a question.
In the chat.
In the chat, you guys answer A or B. Same for Connor. Same for JD. All right? And we're going to ask I don't know how many questions we're going to ask. We'll see how they go. What's more likely to happen at the end of the year this year? Or into the season, I should say, into the regular season. Nebraska plays in the Rose Bowl, A. Or B, USC plays for a national championship.
Whoa.
Oh.
Okay. Yeah, I got my
I'm going
answer.
B. I'm going B.
That's a B?
For me. JD?
I'm going B.
B. All right. Oof.
I want a little bit of an explanation from JD. The chat right now is split 50-50. Some more A's coming in. The chat is saying Rose Bowl. What are you thinking there, JD?
My biggest concern is with going anywhere other than B is Caleb Williams, for my money, is the most talented player in the country, playing in arguably the conference that he'll get the least resistance outside of Utah. So I think you could see Caleb Williams and USC just light the world on fire. Now, that's not my prediction for them. I don't think that they're going to win the Pac-12. But if things just fall perfectly into place. We talked about earlier in the show, if they catch a few breaks and things go their way, maybe, I think Nebraska's probably still, a couple of recruiting classes away from getting to that point. But I'd love it. Hey, I'd be here for Ed, just so we're clear.
Yeah, no, we all want to see Nebraska in the Rose Bowl. All right, next one, Denon.
What's more likely to happen this weekend? A, Nebraska scores 35-plus points. Or B, the defense has 5-plus sacks.
A.
Yeah, I'm going A as well. I mean, forfeits the offensive line back. O'Shawn Mathis is a dog, but Trey Palmer, Casey Tom, all the toys they have offensively, 5 touchdowns doesn't feel like a reach. So I'll go with A there.
All right. I think chat's leaning slightly towards A.
Chat's saying A. I'm afraid to say Nebraska scores over 35, but because I just think that Northwestern likes to run the ball and they're going to chew up clock. But with some turnovers, I think that could happen. Okay, so let's get on to the next one, Denon.
All right. Your sister's wedding is on the same day as Oklahoma versus Nebraska, or in your case, whatever your Oklahoma, Nebraska is.
Okay.
Do you, A, go to the wedding and watch the highlights of the game later, or B, tell your sister there are 40 other weekends in the year and it's her fault she scheduled a wedding on a college football Saturday?
B.
There's no C. There's no C in this game.
That's part of the charm. You got to go one or the other.
Yeah, man. Yeah, I gotta be at the wedding, man. I got 2 sisters. I can't miss the wedding, man. I can't miss the wedding because here's my explanation there. Nebraska, or whatever the situation is, there will be more college football seasons. There will be more college games. However, if I don't go to that wedding, I may not live to see those games. I may not be around for those things because my parents may have something to do with what goes on after the wedding. Okay. So that's my logic there. Also, I may not ever speak to my sister again, and I love my sister. So that's where I'm falling. I know it's not popular, but that's where I have to fall on this. Now, if it's somebody else's wedding, if it's somebody who's maybe a friend, maybe not even a close friend, but a friend, I can make some other arrangements. But blood runs thick, man. I gotta go with the wedding there.
Yeah,
Chat's all on B, just so you guys know. But JD, the chat is on your side and totally understands your position. I can tell you guys right now, my sister knows it's football season. That's her own damn fault for scheduling her wedding then. She's known for months when these dates are. So that's her own fault, I'm telling you. I'm not as nice as JD, though. All right, next one.
All right. Let's see. What would you view... This one's a little bit of a long one. What would you view as a more successful season for Nebraska? A, winning a perceivably weak Big Ten West with a 9-3 record, but getting wrecked in the Big Ten championship, then losing by more than 14 points in a bowl game to a mediocre team coming off of a bad 2-game losing streak. Or B, getting second place in a perceivably tough Big Ten West with a 7-5 record, then winning by more than 14 points in a bowl game against a decent opponent coming off of a respectable 4-game winning streak.
I'm going to go A there because I think people are perceiving bowl games in a manner that they shouldn't be. But who knows who's bowed out of that game, who's getting ready for the combine. Go 9-3 and play for a Big Ten title with all of the conversation we've had around Scott Frost. I mean, you're flipping your record from a year ago. So winning 9 games, playing for the Big Ten title, that's got to be my answer there. I'm going with that.
Connor, you said B?
I said B because I didn't think about what he said with the bowl game. The bowl games don't mean as much anymore, but I mean,
to us they
like
do.
The bowl
guys like, I mean, to you and I they do, but to people who casually follow the sport or kind of look at it here and there, I think that maybe is a better outcome. You have more to build off of. You say, hey, we won 9 games last year. This is your answer, Connor. So I'm taking away from your shine here, but that's where I sit on this topic.
Fair
if
enough.
I
No,
if
I
I
just said the B because of that.
if I may interject, I
Yeah.
would say there's some dependencies there on what you have coming back the next year. Late season momentum, winning against a strong, perceivably strong team, and finishing with a decent record in a tough division in a good conference. You know, let's say you had a sophomore or a junior starting quarterback halfway through the season. Let's say Chuba Purdy comes in halfway through the season because, you know, forbid, Casey Thompson gets hurt or something happens there, or he doesn't pan out. I think the bowl game momentum's great, right? You come in, you're playing with a lot of the people that are coming back the next year. But I think with this year's team, you hit the nail on the head. A for sure.
Here's one other thing I would add to that. Much easier to recruit to 9-3 in second place in the Big Ten. If I'm a high school kid and saying, okay, they were that close, a lot of guys are leaving, maybe I can come in and be the guy. But that's one of the reasons why I would say 9-3 also is a good. I mean, either situation, I think Scott Frost keeping his job, but that's where I fall in the matter.
Yep.
All right, I'm going to ask two more. Does that sound like a decent amount, Connor?
Yes,
Let's
sir.
do it.
All right.
Let's run it.
Who would win in a 2v2 tag team fight? A, Brady Quinn and Joel Klatt, or B, David Pollock and Greg McElroy?
2v2 tag team fight. It's say the teams one more time.
Team A, Brady Quinn and Joel Klatt, or Team B, David Pollock and Greg McElroy?
I will
and
say
just
team
for a little
B.
context.
Yeah,
just
yeah.
so
Let's go.
The ages, I believe, are 37 to 40 or 35 to 40. Two of them are 40. One's 37. One's 35. So they're all right there. If you're wondering about anybody losing a step,
It's all Pollock. Pollock carries. That's the thing. You got to realize Pollock's a beast,
Dude.
and Brady Quinn's a beast too, but not David Pollock level.
Dude, David Pollock. I watched David Pollock on College Game Day, and he wears like running shoes and a suit. I'm like, dude has a screw loose. Like in the best way. Like we all, know a guy who maybe has like a couple of things that he does differently to where you're like, I don't think I'd want to fight you. Now Brady Quinn is jacked, but Brady Quinn played quarterback. David Pollock played defensive line. I don't care how much weight he's lost. He's still probably a psycho defensive lineman at heart. I would ride with David Pollock. I want him on my team.
So both of you going B?
Oh yeah.
Gotta go B, man. Gotta go B. Greg McElroy, get a few jabs in there, give my guy some air. But Pollock is like you said, Connor, he's gonna carry.
He's gonna put Greg McElroy in his backpack and whip both of them with his own hands.
Exactly.
Oh, it'll be whack. Yeah. Greg McElroy will videotape the whole thing.
Yeah. All right, next
standing
one.
There, he's standing there like this. He's standing there like this. Okay, you got it, David. You got it, bro. That's what it's gonna be.
All right. What national championship team would you rather have been a part of? A, the 2005 Texas Longhorns, or B, the 2014 Ohio State Buckeyes?
Oh, golly.
A. Texas.
I'm going to go A as well. Were you going to say your reason there, Connor?
Yeah, I think that was like a magical game beating USC. Everyone believed in SC. Obviously Texas was the underdog that year. Vince Young was awesome, but yeah, I think that kind of upset moment was pretty magic. B has its perks too, because 2014 Ohio State wasn't supposed to win, but I just remember looking back at that Texas game. I was young, but I remember watching it, and that was wild for those guys. So I'm going A.
Yeah, I mean, also think about your life now. If you one of those guys that took a natty home to Austin, and the way they treat you in Austin, and in a city like Austin, who you treat like a national champion, life is probably pretty good. But for the same reasons you said, you beat who at the time was projected to be one of the best programs, one of the best teams of all time, in that Pete Carroll USC team, which we could talk about for another hour if we want to talk about USC. But I would say, I got to go with the Longhorns there. The 05 Longhorns was a special year. One of the best games in college football history. Got to go with the Longhorns.
I definitely lean B, simply because of the Ohio State or the Alabama team that they beat in that playoff. And I think that's also the year that Ohio State wrecked Wisconsin in the Big Ten championship. The same way Wisconsin wrecked Nebraska only, 2 years before? In that Big Ten championship.
Yeah.
So I have a little bit of a spot in my heart for that team putting Wisconsin down the way that they did and then beating Alabama in the first round of the playoffs. And then, I think they ended up making the title game look a little easy because it was against Oregon?
Yeah, they just kind
it
of
was.
they body bagged Oregon.
Yeah.
That's why to me it wasn't as big of a deal. Like the Texas one was a lot more.
Yeah.
Great to beat USC. Okay, so that to finish this off, I got a question, JD. Have you seen this new Netflix documentary with Manti Te'o?
Dude, have I? Very, very good. Like, I was one of those people that was just like, what? Like, how does this happen to someone like Manti Te'o? How do you even get to that point to where you have a girlfriend you haven't met? Like, I was very much so on the side of the fence where I was kind of poking fun and then watched the documentary and I was like, dude went through it. So I'm sure some of it's probably, dramatized, and it's a documentary for Manti Te'o, right? It's kind of supposed to put him in a good light, but even with that information, so much, you just feel so much for a guy like that and what he went through and the way it impacted him, and it still impacted him, to this day. So tons of respect for him for, taking the initiative to get that done. And but yes, I didn't even give you a chance to ask your question. Yes, I have seen it though. Very good.
No, I just wanted to get your thoughts on it because it was such an interesting time back then. I think that was 2012-ish era. And I was just getting out of high school. I think I graduated 2011. I remember catfishing had started, say, 2010 with MySpace and Facebook just transitioning over. And there was no FaceTime. I think AT&T had iPhones. So I had a Verizon phone. I couldn't even get FaceTime. So if I wanted to check in on a girl, I wouldn't be able to tell you. But it was just, I think it cleared him up and it gave me an idea that, Manti really got manipulated in a lot of different ways. And it wasn't just him being kind of a dumb guy who fell for a trap and he should have checked earlier. I think that person really manipulated him. But I thought great documentary. So you guys should definitely check that one out. But I've got a lot of people in this chat saying they loved having you here, JD, and that they want to have you back on. So hopefully at some point in this season, we can do another one of these, especially when we see what Nebraska is actually looking like on the field. It's hard right now in preseason content. We're just regurgitating all the same information that we've been talking about for the last 6 months. And it's just all this analysis on air. So I'm really excited to get some, actual, I guess, I'm trying to think of the right word, but something that we can make actual takes going forward off of, which is game film this weekend. So anyway, I hope you had a good time and I hope we can see you back on in the next couple months.
Loved it, man. I appreciate y'all having me on. I'm excited for them to finally start playing games. Like you said, man, have something that we can actually break down and look at. But no, I really appreciate that, man. I mean, y'all have a phenomenal channel, phenomenal fan base. Like I said, the corn crazed army is strong. So I appreciate y'all letting me be a guest here for a little bit of time.
Thank you. And guys, thank you for being here. This is one of our most watched streams, period. I think this was almost as good as College Football with Sam, which we did a couple weeks ago, and you guys loved that one. So thank you for being here, and I will see you guys in the next one. Make sure you hit the subscribe button before you go if you haven't yet, and the like button too, because it really helps more people to be able to see and find this video. I'll see you in the next one, which is tomorrow, talking about the betting picks I believe I'm going to do and some of the other games of the week. I'll see you guys later. Peace.